I was halfway through my morning coffee, staring out over the land I'd spent the better part of my life working, when I opened an envelope that nearly made me drop dead on the spot. Not a bill, not a tax notice. Worse, much worse. It was an official-looking letter with embossed lettering and language that made my stomach churn. According to it, my 50-acre ranch, the same stretch of dirt and scrub my grandfather worked his hands bloody for, the same land I had poured my savings, sweat, and Saturday nights into, was no longer just mine. No, according to this letter, it now belonged to the community. Apparently, there was a homeowners association, one I had never joined, one I had never even heard of. And they had held a vote, without me, without my say-so, without me even knowing it was happening. And in that vote, they decided that my ranch, my land, had been designated as shared community property. Just like that, I squinted at the page, reading and rereading the words, waiting for some kind of punchline. But there wasn't one. It was dead serious. And worse, the next paragraph told me that, effective immediately, all fences, gates, or anything marking private property had to be removed to comply with their new guidelines. That's when the coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered against the floor. I just stood there for a minute, staring at the mess, feeling heat crawl up the back of my neck. I wasn't confused anymore. I was angry, boiling. They were trying to steal my land, not asking for it, not offering to buy it, steal it. An hour later, I was standing at the front gate, arms crossed, waiting. And sure enough, right on time, a tan sedan rolled up the driveway like it had every right to be there. Stenciled on the door was the logo of the HOA. They'd branded themselves like a corporation. The door popped open, and out stepped Margaret Dawson, middle-aged, smug, and stuffed into a navy blazer that fought for its life to stay buttoned. She clutched a clipboard like it was a badge and marched toward me with a confidence that only comes from someone who's never been hit square in the jaw. Behind her were two of her cronies, same smug expressions, same cheap suits. "Mr. Monroe," Margaret said, giving me this syrupy practice smile. "I trust you received the notice about the land designation. We wanted to discuss next steps." I didn't say anything at first, just stared at her, letting the silence hang long enough to feel heavy. "Next steps?" I finally asked, keeping my arms folded. "Yeah, I've got one. It's called the trespassing laws of this county." Margaret gave this little chuckle, like I was some confused old man who didn't understand how the world worked. "I think you're misunderstanding the situation," she said, smoothing out papers on her clipboard. "The HOA board voted unanimously to include your property within our jurisdiction. Since your land has historically been open for community recreation, it made sense." I cut her off. "Historically? The only history this land has is hard work, cattle, and keeping folks like you on the other side of that gate." Margaret didn't flinch. She just smiled tighter. "It's part of the community now." And that was it. No room for discussion, no apology. She believed every word she was saying. I glanced at the two behind her, both nodding along like bobbleheads, and had to take a breath to keep my voice from rising. "So let me get this straight," I said. "A bunch of people who don't own one single blade of grass on this property got together and decided that it belongs to them now?" Margaret tilted her head, her voice taking on that condescending tone people use when they're explaining something to a toddler. "Not to us, Mr. Monroe. To everyone. To the community." Before I could answer, I heard tires crunching on gravel. I turned just in time to see a silver SUV rolling up the driveway. Doors popped open and out came a family of four. Mom, Dad, two kids, and a golden retriever. They smiled, waved at Margaret like they were old friends, and then headed straight for my pasture like they were visiting a public park. "Hey," I barked, storming toward them. "What do you think you're doing?" The dad, a balding guy in a polo shirt, gave me a grin. "Margaret said the land's open to the public now. Figured we'd check it out." Margaret came up beside me, laying a hand on my shoulder like we were lifelong buddies. "Jack, this is exactly what I was talking about. Families enjoying their space." I shrugged her hand off and squared up to the family. "This isn't your space, this is my land." The mom blinked, confused. "But the HOA said—" "I don't give a damn what the HOA said," I cut in. Get off my property. The husband's smile faded. No need to be rude, buddy. I took a step closer. You've got 3 seconds before I introduce you to the business end of a manure shovel. And right about then, another car pulled in. Then another, and another. Like a line of ants headed for a picnic. Except I wasn't the one throwing the party. In minutes, my ranch looked like a damn state park on the 4th of July. People hauling coolers, setting up lawn chairs, kids chasing frisbees. I turned back to Margaret. Get them office my land now. She sighed like I was being difficult. Jack, hostility won't make this easier. We all need to work together. I stepped closer, my voice low. Margaret, I swear on my granddad's grave, if you don't get off my property, I'll walk you to the road myself with a garden hose. For the first time, I saw the smug crack. She blinked, adjusted her blazer, and turned without another word. Her flunkies scrambled to follow her, and slowly the crowd got the message. They started packing up, murmuring as they left, casting glances over their shoulders. Margaret slid into her sedan but gave me one last look. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. I smiled. You'll be hearing from my shotgun. The moment they were off my property, I called Curtis McGraw, my lawyer. Not just any lawyer either. Curtis made his living off putting HOA bullies in their place. Curtis, I said when he picked up on the first ring, I've got a situation. 20 minutes later, I was in his office laying it all out. Curtis didn't say much while I talked, just nodded and jotted a few things down. When I finished, he leaned back and chewed on his pen like he was thinking about what kind of pizza to order. Classic land grab, he said finally. They've got no legal grounds, but they're hoping you won't fight it. Wrong, I said. I'll fight it. How? Curtis smiled. You don't just fight them. You make them regret ever thinking about it. I leaned in. Go on. First, he said, tapping the desk, you make it impossible for them to use the land. Fences, cameras, warning signs. And if they still don't get the message, make the fences electric. Non-lethal, of course. I sat back in my chair thinking, it was aggressive, it was petty, and I loved it. The next morning, I was at the county records office, digging through every dusty file they had. And guess what? My land had never been part of their HOA, never signed over, never even close. Margaret had filed some paperwork citing an obscure development clause, trying to annex my property like it was a loose piece of a puzzle she could snap into place. That afternoon, I strolled into their office like I owned the place. Margaret was there, head down, fiddling with paperwork. She barely looked up. Jack, she said sweetly, I assume you're ready to comply with the new regulations? I slapped a folder onto her desk. Nope, I'm here to give you a bill. Margaret frowned, opening the folder. Inside were documents proving they had no jurisdiction. But if they claimed they did, then they owed me HOA dues. 20 years worth. The number? Over $200,000. Margaret's face went pale. This is absurd. No, I said. What's absurd is you thinking you could steal my land. Either you pay up or we go to court. And trust me, your fraudulent annexation is going to be a fun one for the judge. The board will never agree to this, she hissed. Then you better find a way to make them, I said. Oh, and I'm making some changes to my property until this is resolved. I walked out before she could say another word. By sunset, I'd ordered enough fencing to make a prison warden jealous, and that was just the start. By sunrise, I was already out there, driving fence posts into the dirt, reinforcing every square foot of the boundary. Industrial-grade wiring, heavy-duty locks, motion sensors, floodlights, and cameras that tracked every movement like it was Fort Knox. And the best part? That electric fence. Legal, non-lethal. Just enough juice to make sure nobody got any ideas about treating my ranch like a playground. By noon, folks had started noticing. Some drove by slow, windows down, craning their necks to see what I was building. Others parked just close enough to snap photos, probably sending them straight to Margaret. She didn't waste time. That afternoon, she came stomping up to the gate again, this time flanked by more of her board members. Margaret was wearing her usual blazer, clipboard clutched in both hands like it was a shield. This is a violation of HOA regulations, she barked. I leaned against the fence, casual. I don't follow HOA regulations, Margaret. I'm not part of your little club. Her face twisted, flipping through her papers. Electric fencing is dangerous. I nodded slowly. So is trespassing. She huffed, pointing at the big LED sign I'd installed by the entrance. Red letters flashed like a warning beacon. Trespassers will be zapped. You're out of control, she snapped. No, I said. I'm just getting started. By the weekend, Margaret and her crew decided to test me. Hard. That Saturday morning, I stepped out on my porch with a cup of black coffee and watched, deadpan, as a caravan of SUVs and minivans rolled up. Picnic baskets, folding chairs. Half the neighborhood had decided it was a great day for a community event. Right there on my land. People milled about, setting up like it was a tailgate party. Kids ran wild. Dogs barked and chased sticks. Some genius even put up a volleyball net. I saw Margaret in the middle of it, smiling and shaking hands like she was running for office. I didn't say a word, just watched. Then it happened. A jogger, earbuds in, not paying attention, ran straight into the electric fence. There was a sharp zap, a yelp, and he stumbled back, swearing as he clutched his arm. Not 5 minutes later, a kid booted a soccer ball into the fence. He chased after it, grabbed the wire, and yelped so loud his mom heard him from 50 yards away. Chaos broke out. Parents yelling, dogs howling, kids screaming, Margaret trying to calm everybody down. I sipped my coffee. Margaret stormed up to the gate, red-faced and livid. "This is illegal," she screamed. I tilted my head. "Nope," I said, cool as the breeze. "County says it's perfectly fine. Non-lethal, remember?" I checked. "You're a menace," she spat. I shrugged. "I'm a landowner. You're the one trespassing." Margaret's face darkened like a storm cloud. "This isn't over," I smiled. "It should be." The next day I got a cease and desist letter. Fancy legal language. Curtis and I had a good laugh about it. He drafted a response that basically said, "You call this community property? Then you owe my client for its maintenance, taxes, and security. Pay up." We crunched the numbers. If Margaret's HOA wanted to keep pretending my land was theirs, they'd be on the hook for more than $250,000. And that was before factoring in legal fees. A few days later, Margaret called an emergency HOA board meeting. I wasn't invited, didn't need to be. News spread fast in small towns, and I heard everything from my porch while sharpening fence spikes. The homeowners were furious. Margaret's bright idea had turned into a financial nightmare. Their dues were about to triple just to cover her screw-ups. People who used to praise her were now demanding her resignation. 2 days after that, Margaret showed up again. She wasn't smug this time. She wasn't confident. She looked desperate. "The board has reconsidered," she said through clenched teeth. "We're willing to drop the claim. Peacefully." I crossed my arms. "Go on." "If you take down the fences," she said, "we'll remove your land from the HOA's jurisdiction. Permanently." I took a slow sip of coffee, savoring it. "Tempting," I said, "but I like the fences. And I really like watching you squirm." Her nostrils flared. "This is extortion." "No," I said, "this is justice." Her jaw clenched. "The board will vote to remove your land." "That's a start," I said, "and you'll be covering my legal fees." "You can't be serious." I took a step closer. "Serious enough to have Curtis file a lawsuit this afternoon if I don't get what I want." Long pause, then she nodded stiffly. "Fine." I watched her leave without another word. I could have ended it there. Could have packed up the fencing and gotten back to ranching. But people like Margaret, they don't stop. They wait, plot, scheme. So I didn't let up. I doubled down, reinforced the fencing, upgraded my security system, added more cameras. Curtis was on speed dial. I was ready for anything. And then things got quiet. Too quiet. About a week later, I noticed them. Suits, men I didn't recognize, walking around the neighborhood, whispering with HOA board members. Some folks stopped waving at me in town, acting guilty, like they'd been caught cheating at cards. Word filtered back to me soon enough. The HOA was in crisis. Homeowners were furious about the special assessments Margaret tried to slap on them. A petition was circulating. They wanted Margaret out. And the next HOA meeting? Well, that was going to be a show. I showed up early, sat in the back, arms crossed, waiting. When Margaret walked in, the air got thick, Tense. She took her seat up front, but all the smugness was gone. She looked like someone waiting for a sentence. First to speak was old Mr. Wills. He stood slow, hands shaking but voice sharp. "We've had enough," he said. "Under your leadership, Margaret, this HOA has gone from neighborly to tyrannical. You cost us money. You nearly got us sued. We don't trust you." There were nods, murmurs. Then a woman, Tina, I think, stood up and jabbed a finger at her. "You told us Monroe's land was ours. We believed you, and now we're paying for your lies." Margaret tried to defend herself. "I was acting in the best interests." "No," I cut in, standing slowly from my seat in the back. "You were acting in your best interests." All heads turned. Silence stretched. "She tried to steal my land," I said. "She thought she could bully me. She failed." Margaret's face twisted. "You don't even belong to this HOA." I smiled. "Oh, but I do, remember? You forced my property into your jurisdiction. That gives me a vote." The realization hit them like a brick wall. Margaret had been so eager to claim my land, she hadn't realized she'd given me power over her. A motion was called, a vote. Hands went up, one by one, then all at once. It wasn't even close. Margaret was out. The next morning, a moving truck backed up to her house. I watched from my porch as she barked orders at the movers. She was done. Power, influence, gone. She was leaving town. Later that day, I got a knock on my door. It was Derek and a couple of other board members.
They looked uncomfortable. "So," Derek started, "we're looking for a new HOA president." I didn't let him finish. "No. Just hear us out," he said. "We need someone who'll keep things fair." I narrowed my eyes. "Still no." Then the other board member, a woman named Janice, stepped forward. "Jack, if you're president, you can dissolve the HOA." That stopped me cold. "You're serious?" She nodded. "No more dues, no more rules, just folks managing their own properties." I thought about it. Running an HOA sounded like hell, but shutting it down? That had a certain appeal. "Fine," I said, "but on one condition." "Anything," Derek said. I smiled. "I'm burning every last copy of your rulebook." A week later, it was official. The HOA was dissolved. Unanimous vote. People cheered. They shook hands. You'd think they'd won the lottery. No more fines for grass height. No more letters about mailbox colors. No more HOA. To celebrate, I threw the biggest barbecue the county had ever seen. Smoked brisket, ribs, cornbread. Beer flowed like water. For the first time in years, folks looked happy to live here. Curtis showed up, grabbed a plate, and shook his head. "You really did it," he said. "Tore an HOA down brick by brick." I raised my beer. "Told you I'd fight dirty." He laughed. "What now?" I looked out over the fields. My fields. My fences standing tall. My land. "I'll think of something." And as the sun sank behind the hills, I took a long, slow sip. The land was mine again. Always had been. Always would be. Not a single soul was ever going to take it from me. Not an HOA. Not a neighbor. Not a damn person. And that's the kind of story you tell your grandkids when they ask what it means to stand your ground.